Okay, great. It's 12 minutes past our start time. I think we can be starting with a few introductions as other members join in, and they'll find us as we dive into the gist of the matter. So, welcome everyone to this Twitter space, and we all know it's about stakeholder engagement and management. And personally, I'm excited to dive into this topic with all of you members on the space. As my name is Fiona Nyanzi Nambogo. I work with ATEC. I'm currently the business development lead at ATEC. ATEC is an ICT and ICT consultants and management company. But for this space, we are partnering with 8 Learning, an institute of management and technology that is dealing in training and in areas of innovation, leadership, and professional excellence. Of course, we are looking at how we can better improve ourselves in the big things we do and in our businesses, in our work, and of course in areas of technology. That is why the institute is also here. So I see we are now 15 minutes from our time. Yes, we shall not wait for everyone. We've given them at least 15 minutes, but I encourage you to share out the link. Good thing our guest is on, so we can dive into the discussions. Yes, I'm seeing colleagues are joining in. You're most welcome to the space. You're most welcome. You're welcome. As I said earlier, my name is Fiona Nyanzi, and I'll be hosting the space with our guest for today. And without further ado, I think I'll share a few details about our guest before we proceed with the session. We'd like not to take a lot of time since it's late in the night. We will take at least an hour. Our first session will be more of a Q&A, but later we encourage feedback. We encourage questions to come in, sent to our guest, questions to share with us, experiences in regards to stakeholder management, and all others as we conclude the session. So welcome once again. I see you are all joining in. Welcome once again. So as we all know, effective stakeholder management at least has become very vital in our daily lives, in the business we do, in the work we do, because on a daily, we always interact with different people, but we tend not to know how best we can manage these different people. How do we communicate? How do we, and all that. So we are just basically here to learn from our guest as the expert in the field, but also share our experiences. You never know, something may help out another. So our guest today is CPA Becca Sechito. And CPA Becca Sechito is an accountant by profession. He's a member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, that is ACCA, and CPA. Of course, he brings on board at least or not even more than 5 years of experience in different fields. But I will not say a lot of things. I want to allow him really give us a brief about himself before we go into the discussion for today. So allow me welcome our guest, CPA Becca Sechito. Please introduce yourself to the members.
Thanks, Fiona. And thanks to our listeners. Becca Sechito is my name, and I'm the managing partner of Sechito, Kaimanda and Company Associates. This is an audit firm that does auditing, tax, and accounting for mostly, maybe I can classify them as almost in each and every area and aspect of business. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, CPA. I think we will dive into the discussion for today. But before we get deeper into stakeholder management, a person on this space may be wondering, when we talk about stakeholders, what exactly do we mean? So we're going to first dive into the questions to our expert. But as the discussion goes on, please note down all the things you'd like to learn, you'd like to clarify. Also, those that have experiences to share, please note them down. We shall be sharing as the space goes on. So, CPA Baker, what do we today, if a person wants to understand this aspect of stakeholders when it comes to business, what do we mean, and how does one get to identify that a particular individual or an organization is a stakeholder in their business or work?
Thanks, Fiona. The whole issue about stakeholder, previously people would actually confuse it with shareholder. So when they would hear something to do with stakeholder, sometimes they would confuse it with shareholder. But to give more clear light about these two issues is about that when you are a stakeholder, or for any business to recognize that, in fact, this is a stakeholder, someone must be able to differentiate and identify basically the shareholders that the stakeholders that the business might be having. When we talk about the issue of stakeholder, this is one who has an interest, who has a concern. This can be an organization, it can be a group, it can be an individual. But as long as any of those has a concern, has an interest in the business, then that is what we refer to as a stakeholder. Put it simply, any person, any group, any organization that really has an interest, it can be maybe in the activities, it can be maybe in the outcomes, it can be in the performance, it can be by any aspect of the business. That is what we call a stakeholder. And usually in stakeholder, when we talk about stakeholders, because we have already said that it can be a group, it can be a person, it can be an organization, as long as they are affected or they affect the business, then these are what we refer to as stakeholders. And put it simply, you can always even look at them differently. You can identify them differently by looking at those, because accordingly, we always classify stakeholders in two ways. They can be either internal stakeholders or they can be external stakeholders. We don't have any other category beyond that. So when you look at an organization, when you look at a business, and the term comes to you called stakeholders, then you know that these are people you need to manage, and they are both external and internal. Those who are internal are those actually who are having who have a direct interest in the organization. For example, talk about shareholders, talk about employees, talk about managers, etc. Then, of course, when we talk about the external one, talk about customers, talk about suppliers, talk about government, etc. So, an issue to do with stakeholders, just look at it from an interest perspective. Anyone, any group, any organization that has got an interest in the activities, outcome, or performance of the business is what we refer to as a stakeholder.
Thank you so much, CPA Baker. So you're trying to classify these into external and external. So that takes us to something that is really triggering. How do we go into the concept of stakeholder management after identifying that a person X or an employee X is also a stakeholder when it comes to my business? How can we explain the concept of stakeholder management to a person in this space today?
Oh, thank you so much. When it comes to stakeholder management, you see, we have already defined the key concept called stakeholder, who they are. Now we are also looking at the part of management. So that means you are saying the other group, we have talked about the individuals, the organization that have got an interest in the activities, outcome of the organization. And therefore we are saying if they have that interest in that, how do we manage them? Therefore, the word managing is simply the process, is simply a process. Of course, this process will begin by you identify, you analyze, you prioritize, and engage. So when we talk about stakeholder, which we have already defined, we come to management and we link both words. It means after you identifying them, now it comes to the part of managing them. But how do you manage them? It all comes to how you identify them, how you analyze them, how you prioritize them, and how you engage with them. Of course, why you do that is, of course, you want to understand either their needs, you want either to understand maybe their concerns, maybe you also want to understand maybe their expectation, and maybe to effectively kind of manage them in one way, in usually normal ways of doing things, or the way we are saying what is these days we say you manage them politically, you put politics in managing them. But the whole part with to do with stakeholder management, it is simply that process you undertake to identify them, to analyze them, to prioritize them, and to engage with them so that you can be able to understand their needs, to understand their concerns, and maybe to understand the expectation and be able to manage them or manage the relationship with them. Back to you, Fiona.
Okay. Thank you so much, CP Ebeka. So that takes me to something that is really interesting. You notice that some of the stakeholders you're mentioning, we really have to create some sort of relationship with them to ensure the smooth running of business or of the day-to-day activities we do in our work. And in today's world, we really survive and benefit from those relations that we've built in during our careers, during the different engagements we are in. So, how best would you advise someone on building meaningful relationships with stakeholders, and to what extent should these relationships be?
Of course, thank you once again. Why build a relationship with stakeholders? Because you have understood them, you have known the process of managing them. Now you have come to the part of why, the why question comes to you. Why do we have to create some kind of relationship with the stakeholders? Of course, for example, when we were talking about stakeholders before, we said this can be either it is an individual, a group, an organization that have, of course, an interest in what you do as a business and all of that. But sometimes some of them are not important. Sometimes you have, look at a team of footballers where the owners, look at a team, maybe if I can give an example of Manchester United or Arsenal or Chelsea or Liverpool, those which are common teams that we do support here in Uganda. These teams have owners, and owners they have all the money they need to buy any player they need in that team and all of that. But why, if at all fans say we are tired of this manager and they put pressure, you would find actually at the end of the day, they are chasing away the manager. Why? The question is why? Look at the tabloids. The moment they begin writing about a manager negatively, at some point T, that manager ends up being sacked. Yet maybe even a team might be doing well. The question is why? Why do we have to go into managing relationship with stakeholders? Here, the whole issue about managing is because the success, it has been proved that success and sustainability of any business and survival is linked to how that business manages its stakeholders. Therefore, any business that wants to survive, look at the current world we are living in today, and look at the perspective of Uganda. legal requirements are ever increasing, number one. You have the cost and standards of living ever increasing. You have the cost of doing business almost tripling from what it was 5-6 years ago. Why do you need to manage stakeholders? Because if you don't do that, chances are survival, success, sustainability of that business. If you looked at the recent URSB kind of list where they scrapped off some of the companies, in you'll find that the biggest challenge or the biggest issue has been in how these businesses were managing the sustainability and survival, to manage the survival and sustainability. It was due to how they managed their stakeholders. I, for one, I have ever been in an organization where the poor management of stakeholders led to that organization. When it was almost coming to number one, it is now almost in number 3 or number 4. So the whole issue about stakeholder building relationship with stakeholders is fundamental to the success and sustainability of the business. So how can we survive? How can we benefit? Or how can we have meaningful businesses? That is the question. But in terms of building the relationship with our stakeholders, number one, because we began from the other part in stakeholder, because this is part of this is a continuation of managing.
Sure.
Because the question you wanted to bring in was, how do we survive? How best should one come in to build a meaningful relationship with stakeholders?
Yes.
To build a meaningful relationship, you will not enter into a company, even if you are the manager, even if you are the owner, even if you are what, and assume that actually you know everything concerning your business without undertaking a deeper stakeholder analysis. So a deeper stakeholder analysis will involve different dimensions. Of course, we have several theories. We have several people who have talked about stakeholder management, but the most important of all is one of Philip Mendel, who gave us the 4 quadrants. He said, as you identify, the number one part of building a meaningful relationship with stakeholders is first to identify them. Don't identify everyone, but identify those we call key stakeholders. Any business has got key stakeholders and any other stakeholders. So to build a meaningful relationship, there must be, number one, trying to make sure that actually you identify a key stakeholder. And how do you identify them? You start the relevant stakeholder, you identify them, prioritize them, of course, based on the level of influence, interest, and impact to the organization. So what did Mendel come to a conclusion to? Said the 4 quadrants is high, check the high, check the low, check the high-low, and check the low-high. That's how he gave us that matrix. So what does it mean to you? Check boxes where you find that actually someone has, because he gave us two areas to look at, power and influence. So if someone has got power, but less, maybe power and interest. If someone might be having high power, but has low interest in an organization or a business. Or someone might be having low power, low interest. Someone can be having both at a high level. So that one led us to believe that in actual sense, For you to build meaningful relationship is you must first identify your key stakeholders. By identifying them, you prioritize them based on the level of influence, based on the interest they have in that organization, and the impact they can have on that organization. I'll give you an example. For any business, what can we call key stakeholders? And if you are an employee, if you are the manager, if you are the whoever, the owner, you need to know who are the key stakeholders. Number one, look at the key stakeholders. Let us look at maybe shareholders. Those are key. They are shareholders because they own part of the company, but at the same time, they are stakeholders. Why? Because they have high power, and at the same time, they have the low levels of interest are also high because they want to be assured that this business will give them a return. So, why do you want to manage the relationship? Is that at any one moment they decide to say, we are pulling the plug, we are withdrawing our money out from your business, you are gone. The business will shut down. So you can see that you can see that they have high influence, high interest, and the impact the organization can be fatal should they choose to act. Those are some of the examples that come with identifying the key stakeholders if you want to build meaningful relationship with stakeholders. What about the issue of understanding their needs and expectation? Different stakeholders have different expectations. Look at a shareholder. His concern is, at the end of the day, is he assured of a dividend? If the answer is yes, then you have managed them. Look at an employee. What is their issue? Are they assured that at every month they will be paid a salary? That is their issue. Look at anyone, look at a supplier. He wants to be sure whether if he supplies his goods and maybe on credit, then he will be paid within the same, seamlessly, of course, within the agreed timelines, and when he's sure that actually the money will come. So that is understanding their needs and expectation. But how do you understand their needs? Because you don't live with them, you are not with them every day. Take some kind of direct communication, call them. Now that we have a lot of the communication has been eased globally and locally. So you can either give a call, you can undertake a survey, you can take interviews, you can create any form of feedback mechanism and make sure that you understand matters that are most important to them. And then you tailor your approach to make sure that you can manage them. Then the other part is, how do you communicate? Many people do not communicate transparently. How do you communicate to stakeholders? If you're writing to shareholders, is it the way you write to employees? Is it the way you write to suppliers? Is it the way you write to customers? Is it the way you write to civil organization or any other person? So you need to know how to communicate to them, what sort of information to give them, and how do you get their attention to that information. That is key. Of course, we have always had the problems where some people become more bigger than the organizations, and they end up messing up certain things, where you find that someone will come in an organization, is a manager, is a CEO, but because maybe the shareholders, he was maybe he was headhunted somewhere because of the better skills, whatever, and all of that, and brought into a position. Then at some point they feel that they are bigger than the organization. What do? They start communicating differently. So because they know they are there at the mercy, if they feel like they help this organization to join it, the communication breaks down. He's writing to a shareholder who is their boss and the owner of the organization, but communicating to them as if they are communicating to a normal employee. So certain aspects of building relationship must also come up with good communication and transparent communication. What about engaging with them proactively? Engage. Don't wait for some people in organizations. which even have shareholders, have other different stakeholders, you find that maybe until a certain stakeholder A, who is even entitled to that information, maybe look at the issue of annual report. For example, an organization with its management and an active board does not wait for shareholders to come commenting, why are we not having a general meeting, an annual general meeting, why are we not receiving the annual report, why are we not receiving this? It should be the onus. The onus should be placed on management and the board of directors to make sure that at any one moment they are in active engagement. Look at even, for example, look at the recent, I will give this one just recently happened and it is still fresh in the news. There are many accusations that have been made against our parliament here, the misuse of taxpayer money, what. In one of the plenaries, when the leader of opposition asked the speaker about the issue, the speaker was like, that is hearsay. Even when it is hearsay, it is the Ugandans have asked the question. What the parliament would have done probably is to say, we are investigating and therefore we shall get back with a report maybe at a certain point T. That is good communication, or that is actually engaging the masses proactively. But once you simply say with impunity, those are rumors, we cannot engage in them, let's go on with some other business. So sometimes that's where engaging proactively can break, not engaging proactively can break the communication.
Okay.
And of course, there is that part of building personal connection, maybe. What about building personal connection? Let's move on from just having professional interactions. Because usually sometimes when you get a contract from someone or a business gets a contract, all you limit yourself is at a professional level. But most people who have been successful in business or managing stakeholder relationship, they go an extra mile. They go beyond just the professional interaction and actually sometimes have a one-on-one or personal connection, trying to understand each other, because that eases more to do with the conflict, and all the others maybe to deliver on the promise, adapt and evolving within the business, and so on and so forth. That whole part is quite wider. We cannot exhaust it as of now.
Okay. Thank you so much, CP Ebeka. You've really thrown a lot of critical information when it comes to identifying the stakeholders, prioritizing them, communicating to them, seeing how best we can engage with them. And it all sums up to how we can manage or have a good relationship or meaningful relationship that is at least lasting and has someone coming back or someone picking more interest in your business. But let me take you back just a small slight step. There may be a person on this space that is wondering, if I'm a small business owner, let me say I have a boutique somewhere, do these concepts still apply to how I manage these different stakeholders? I really do not want us to leave this category out as we are discussing this particular session.
Thank you so much. Business, for any kind of business, is business, whether small, whether medium, whether big. The category we're talking about, we classify it as SME, the small medium enterprises. So these SMEs have the same way or same ways of managing stakeholders, the same to do with, for example, if someone is owning a boutique, for example, the example you have given, let's look at the exact stakeholder, who are the stakeholders within the boutique business. Number one, the key ones, of course, are the customers. Isn't it? That is one. Sometimes, if they are renting, it is the landlord. He's interested in knowing whether that boutique will be able to pay rent. Isn't it? Then the customer is interested because he gets these supplies from this business, from this boutique, but at the same time, they're the one who bring in the money. Then talk about government in terms of maybe property tax, where they are selling from. Talk about maybe the ground rent, if at all they are in a commercial building. Then talk about some taxes that they are paying the business income or the presumptive tax, whichever that is applicable to them. So in this regard, you have several stakeholders there. And actually, even suppliers are in, those who are supplying the boutique, the latest the designs and all of that. So the question is, do the same issues or concept apply to small business as it is to bigger business? The answer is yes. The same concept and the same application must apply. And usually to smaller businesses, because these are mostly owner managed, they depend on the individual to thrive. The concepts become even more wanting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I think there's one or two more things I would like to really first get your mind about before we dive into the Q&A from the people in the space. Based on your experience in the different fields you've been, could you share maybe a few examples of how you handled a successful stakeholder engagement, or how you handled this particular situation, based on the fact that you've also shared some issues that happened. You have also shared the URSB saga, where those organizations had to be put out of business, but some of the reasons that caused that was because of poor management of the different stakeholders in the business. So, looking at your experience, could you share any success story or how best we could manage these particular aspects?
All right. In one of the issues that there have been, of course, so many issues. For example, I'll give you an issue where one of the stakeholders we have ever worked with made a mistake. He didn't know also how to manage the relationship. In recent world, of course, this example is the real example, and it actually happened to us not more than a year ago. But I will not mention the names or what, but I will try to give you the practicability of how failing to manage a relationship can lead to that cause. But I'll also give you one where managing an expectation has given us an upper hand. So one of them, both of these scenarios are real and have happened in my real life, because I'm giving real life examples based on my experience. We had recently, we are handling business in a form of collaboration. If you have seen the landscape of consultants recently, is all about collaboration. You get another company, you bid for something, and then when you win the bid, then you work on it together. Maybe one is an expert in one area and another one is an expert in another area. So particularly, one becomes the lead, for example, and maybe the other one becomes the co-lead. But the particular example that happened to us is when the lead, we entered into a partnership with a certain organization. We were working together clearly, but they were receiving funds on behalf of the consortium. We were a consortium of organizations performing the same activity, but each one having different packages which they're handling for the proper execution of the project. What happened is that because money was passing through them first, then to be able to be distributed to all the other stakeholders, they did communicate effectively or be transparent in telling us the extent of the problems they had within the organization. You know, most organizations have a breakdown in the internal control systems, but which sometimes when you enter into collaboration or whatever, you find that they are not disclosing. So a funder sent money, which was meant to do business or undertake a project, and these people never told us that they had a Ganesh on their account. They had so many suppliers demanding from them whom they had not paid, and then a court had issued an injunction over their account. So what happened was, when the money came onto account, the money was all taken. The court confiscated all the money, and the project stalled. What happened there? This has a two-way of managing. Imagine You are a consult. You are two partners undertaking a project. One is your lead. He receives the money, does not communicate that he has an injunction on an account, and therefore money comes there. Money is taken. There is no communication. There is nothing. And at the time of you requesting the money or part of the money to undertake project activity, because you are sure the money came, then someone finds you and shockingly reveals to you that actually all the money has been taken. Now, the moral part of it it first kills the morale. You think so much, we thought about so much how we are going to deliver that particular project. And the question was, how do we do that? Number one was we didn't want to go to the fund and tell them that actually money has been taken away. Secondly, this person was not even willing to give any smaller money to undertake the project. So what happened? And the biggest chunk of the project was supposed to be undertaken by us. So you can see, we had to go to manage, of course, such an issue. We had to go and borrow, finalize the project, and give the funder his deliverables as promised. But that almost killed our relationship between us and that organization, because they didn't know how to manage the relationship. So that is one particular example. Secondly, we had a project where we are building a studio somewhere in Jinja. And then and it was during COVID, and we all understand during COVID we weren't moving, we were stuck in our homes, but then work had to continue. So we entrusted our money with this consultant who called himself a consultant to build for us a studio and all of that. The contract, the first part of it, we entered this contract without also assessing so much of what we required. And it was purely technical. It was a technical contract that even when we tried to do as much, to dig deep into the technical abilities or requirements of the project, we thought we had finished all of them. But as we embarked on actually implementing the project, new requirements came in, which the funder was not actually ready to fund, because the funder told us that we had agreed with them that this is the only amount actually that will help us finish the project. We gave the person the money. The person went to Jinja, put a studio up. It wasn't. It was a substandard studio. The person vanished. What happened? We had to own up. You don't go to the fund and say, I also bought someone and someone took up your money. The funder can never now trust you again. We had to operate what we call an onerous contract. For those who understand, onerous is when actually the costs outweighs the benefit in the contract. So we ended up actually getting our buffer, some of our money, and go and complete the contract. So the contract was pure at a loss. But we had to manage the stakeholder relationship the other side, but at the same time, see how we are also moving on with this person who had to take on our money. So those are some of the key aspects that in all aspects, there must be someone who is looking at the better part of it. The internal part of how you handle situations matters a lot in how you win other projects as you move forward. Certainly, in all businesses, there will be losses, but the way you manage the losses, and some people in businesses, sometimes most of them are emotional. One thing happens like this, someone is emotional, does not even want to do anything again, and actually they end up actually pushing themselves out of the business. Because the moment you tell a funder that his money has been stolen, in actual sense, you have actually hanged yourself. The funder can never trust you again. So in managing such a relationship, you must be clear, you must be sure that even when you meet obstacles like that, actually you are able to actually move forward. I hope those are some of the few live examples I can give you.
Okay, thank you so much, CPA. So maybe as we dive into the next session, where we shall have members asking a few questions or sharing your experience, I'd like to ask one more thing. How do you what would you maybe give as a guidance to our person listening based on these experiences and pitfalls you experienced with the different stakeholders you've worked with? How would you best advise someone to maybe either avoid or not to face the same mistakes at a certain point in time? Something like that. How would you advise someone when it comes to actually areas of communication, transparency, partnership? How best can they really look into that category and know that we are getting into this with a certain stakeholder X? This is what we can easily look out for.
It is typical for our Ugandan businesses. Being an auditor for the last 15 years has made me, has given me a chance to understand the terrain of businesses in Uganda. And sadly, is that most businesses that start in Uganda ignore the expertise of those who know the business. Whoever gets some money, 2 million, 10 million, 5 million, 100 million, thinks actually they can undertake on the business themselves. But rather, they don't know the concept of making sure that any business must have what we call the starting amount. These amounts are set aside to set up a business. But you'll find someone, he wants to start a business. He goes to your RSB, because most of our Ugandan people goes to your RSB, registers a business, and he thinks actually that's all. He goes and opens up a shop, a bigger one, maybe hardware or some sort of business, and they start. Along the way, they begin to have 1,000 problems. And now by the time they are looking for an expert, something they would have started with at first, it is something actually they end with. Why? Number one, lack of awareness in terms of doing business. Secondly, is the ability to spend. Most people don't want to spend money to put the business straight. And once they assume that they can actually run a business somehow, somewhere, they end up. And I think you have, of recent, for most of the listeners here, you have heard about so many outcries from the public about how URA is treating them and about this, about that. Those outcries, some of them actually are, some of them are genuine, and some of them, of course, are not. And some of them are arising about how people are handling a business. If you want to begin any business, I would like to actually advise that get an expert who will analyze for you the business you are going to do. Will tell you the type of taxes you are going to pay. Will tell you the type of stakeholders and how to manage them. Will tell you how you are going to compute your profits. Will even some people, their business, they have been pushed out of the business because they cannot differentiate between a markup and something else. So when do I add at what stage do I add the profit, or at what stage do I have to sell as the same as maybe my partner, or at what stage? So they are business different. I've seen an example of where someone, because these are strategies of in terms of managing stakeholders. Now look at a customer where you are two shops are together. One is registered for VAT, another one is not registered for VAT. Automatically, one who is not registered for VAT will be selling more because actually their prices are lower than one actually who is registered for VAT, because he has to now embed in the part of VAT which makes the goods expensive. So in a nutshell is that all this is about how you want to manage stakeholder in terms of the expectation and the location you have selected in terms of doing a business. Because most people also, they want to do business, they select a location where they can't get even a single coin, or even the business they have put it there, they have not analyzed the type of individuals living in that community, whether those are their needs or not. It all goes about back about the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Who are my target group? What is my niche? And that's how someone should be able to have correct strategies of doing business in terms of managing all stakeholders within the loop.
Okay, beautiful.
Back to you, Fiona.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, CPA. I think if we continue this discussion with the pool of knowledge that you're really sharing with us, if we continue that discussion, we may not end. However, I would like to invite members that have a question or an experience to share with us. You can request for speaker rights and we can grant them to you. You go ahead and ask your question. Please feel free. Feel free to ask anything, not forgetting that the person on our guest today on this call has experience in diverse fields. You can ask anything. If you feel it's connected to this, please shoot. Feel free to ask any questions. We've really dived into a lot of things, but we understand that majority of these we may need, in case you need additional concepts, understanding these concepts better. We shall be available and we shall be having an online sessions at our 8 Learning platform. So feel free to also visit the platform for different training sessions. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, you can share them on the call. You can also share them in our DMs. You can share them in any platform as long as you can reach out to us. You can as well also share the questions to the expert. You can also, this is also a platform for us to also network, go follow each other, try to find out how best we can also benefit from each other. Don't shout. These sessions are really meant for us to learn from each other, but also do a bit of more networking to also get to learn, get to understand where we can get more resources to improve how we do business, how we perform at our workplaces, and in all those areas. So if you have questions, I'll be waiting for those. If you have any clarifications or experiences, please share with us as we conclude our call. But it has really been an exciting session for me personally. I've picked a few things and some takeaways from me are really looking at the basics of key things we need to do when it comes to stakeholders and stakeholder management. Look at identifying who your stakeholders are. When you understand who your stakeholders are in a particular business or work environment, you will see how best you can prioritize these stakeholders. Of course, this is me. You can also pick out a few things. I see someone has requested to speak. Okay, Mohindo has. Okay, Mohindo, please go ahead. Okay. Mohindo, please go ahead. You have speaker rights now. Okay, as he sorts himself, we can be proceeding.
Hello.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Thank you so much. Mine is a quick one. I'd like to first thank the guest for the knowledge that he has shared with us. I was really not, I didn't know a lot of things before this session. So my question is, or my clarification is, so in simple terms, stakeholders means people who are, does it mean your bosses, or it means the both your bosses and the client? Or if I'm looking at it in a perspective of an employee, if I'm an employee, who are my stakeholders? Yeah, that's my question. So can make it much more clear in that way. Or which people I should look at as stakeholders so I can be able to see how I learn to manage them in my own perception as an employee. Thank you.
Thank you, Muhindo. The concept of stakeholders is applying to business in general or an organization. And when we began by saying anything to do with stakeholder by definition is any person, any group, any organization that has got an interest in the activities, in the outcomes of an organization or a project, etc. That's how we began. So in terms of stakeholders, we said these can be categorized into both external and external. And as an employee, you are an internal stakeholder because you are directly influencing the activities of an organization, and you are directly benefiting from the organization by that organization paying you a salary. Therefore, you have other stakeholders you deal with, and one of them are your managers, is a totally different stakeholder group. The board of your company, who are also another different part of the stakeholders. The shareholders of that company where you're working are also a different category of stakeholders. Is that it? Then there is also government, because government is a stakeholder on its own, which affects both the company and you. It affects you by taking your pay every month, but also affects by the company by taking actually the annual income tax. So those are some of the stakeholders. Parallel to you are the other stakeholders, but all of you as an employee, shareholders as also stakeholders and all that, all of you are in a category of a stakeholder. The only thing, they are not that stakeholder does not mean that these are your bosses. No, these are your counterparts also have an interest in the business, but that category can also include your bosses, who are the managers and the directors, who are the shareholders. But it can also include suppliers who are not your business, but because they supply your company. It can also include customers who buy your services, but also they are not your bosses, but rather because they supply, they come and buy your services. So it is that part. It is a whole general concept that talks about whoever has an interest in an organization's activity or outcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CPA. I hope your query has been addressed, Mohindo.
100%.
Okay. I don't want to take a lot of time unless we have any other questions from the people on call. But however, from my side, I really want to appreciate everyone that has been able to tune in for this space and listening to the different things we have been sharing. Of course, we've explored strategies for effective stakeholder management, but we've also looked at how we can best do all this as a concept in our businesses, small or big, organization or not. And when it comes to the different stakeholders, as us who are employed in other areas or in other organizations, how do we know who is a stakeholder? So please, we should not forget that yes, we've had a 1-hour discussion about the stakeholder management, but it's entirely a big concept that we can delve into further in other sessions probably, but it's also an ongoing journey as we carry out business, as we carry out work, as we do the things we do. We just have to keep in mind who our stakeholders are and prioritizing them, but as well also putting focus on the communication strategies we are using and ensuring transparency in business. Of course, I've picked a few things in that area as well, and we need to know how what is the level of influence and the level of impact, or what is the power that a stakeholder has over your business, or what is their interest in the business. So that helps us best prioritize and categorize these different stakeholders. Those are a few takeaway notes from my end. And to conclude this session, I would like to thank our guest for tonight, our CPA Baker. Thank you for really finding the time for this discussion, and we hope to have you soon on other topics in regards to the taxation, since you are really knowledgeable in that area, in taxation, accounting, and we all know we are having a lot of issues in those areas as well that we could get a few insights from you as well. So thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you. And to all the people that have managed to tune into this call, please show up next time when we're having these different engagements about the different topics that come in the that come in our DMs. Of course, as I conclude, thank you for listening. My name is Fiona Nyanzi. Please go check out some of the learning materials and learning courses that we have shared or prepared for you at our 8 Learning platform. And the link is elearning.8learning.org. We shall be sharing a recording for this session and the different links for the website where you can get more details about this. Unless otherwise, thank you so much. I would like to end this space with, I think, a prayer, since we didn't start with one. And anyone that can volunteer to give us a prayer as we close the session so that we can go in spirit. I'm seeing we have Bella. Bella, you can give us a prayer. Thank you so much, sir. Oh, I have 2 people volunteering to give us a prayer. Thank you so much. Okay, Bella, over to you.
Humble ourselves and pray. Father, we thank you for this space. We thank you for the discussions we've had. We ask, oh God, that you give us the wisdom to apply the things that we've had to take our organizations, our businesses, and our consultancy firms to the next level. In Jesus' mighty name we've prayed. Amen.
Thank you so much, Bella Moses, and have a good night, everyone. But let's keep in touch. Let's speak on our different accounts, the DM. You can reach out, and have a good night. Thank you.